My name is Kendall. I'm with the American Eagle Foundation. We are a nonprofit organization that houses and rehabilitates birds of prey. We have three main focuses, and that is rehabilitation, conservation, and education. So with those three things, rehabilitation, we take in injured birds of prey, and our main goal is to nurse them back to health. We get them vet care and house them at our facility until they're ready to be re-released into the wild. And so we will release them, and that is always our end goal when it comes to rehabilitation, is to release birds back into the wild. Conservation, another key point that we like to focus on, and that's just preserving our environment not only for us, but for these animals, and making sure we all have a nice and clean and preserved place to live. And then education is doing things like this, or coming to Wilderness Wildlife Week and doing educational programs where we can use these birds to educate people about the threats they faced in the past and the threats they continue to face today, and what we can do to help in the future to make sure that those threats are diminished. And then she'll get a bird out.
Okay. I'm Lindsay. I'm also with the American Eagle Foundation, and I actually have Mikey here with me. He is a Harris hawk. Unfortunately, he is not found here in East Tennessee. He is more of a southwestern bird, so like Texas, Arizona, New Mexico. But the really cool thing about the Harris hawk is that they are actually nicknamed wolves of the sky, and that's because they will actually go out and hunt in packs like wolves. So what they do is they'll actually coordinate with each other, and they'll take the young of that year out with them. And then they're actually a matriarchal society, so they'll actually, all the females will take out the young. And then you can kind of hear him doing a little purr. Of course he stops. But they actually will use that to communicate to each other, to where as they're out hunting, if one of them spots it, they will do a different call to signal that the food is over this way, and then they will all kind of coordinate toward where that call came from until they spot it themselves. And then they will actually tell the young to follow it, and they'll actually flush it out through the brush and even the rocks, to where the older ones can come in and help make that kill. I don't know if I can say kill. But you can kind of see that he has this more of like a brown kind of reddish color, and that's that way he can blend in with that desert environment that he is found in. And then you can also see that he has a little bit of a white tip on his tail that helps them distinguish each other while they're out there. And another cool fact about the Harris hawk is that while they're out hunting, since it is the desert, there's not a lot of trees, right? So what they'll do is they'll find a cactus or some kind of like taller brush or shrub, and one will land on it, and then another one will actually come and land on top of them, and they will actually do a stacking behavior, to where they'll make a 360 kind of tower looking around. That way they can spot that prey. It's actually really cool to see. But that's about it for him. Yeah, do you want to get Kiwa? That way we can go into the difference between these two.
So this is Kiwa. Kiwa is a red-tailed hawk. You can always tell a red-tailed hawk by those pretty red tail feathers. And these guys you will find all over North America. So they pretty much live everywhere. And Kiwa is a non-releasable bird, like all the birds we have here at AEF. He is what we call a human imprint. So he actually came into a rehab facility due to an injured wing. And while he was there, he actually began to rely on the humans, and now he doesn't know how to hunt for himself. So if he was to be released out into the wild, he would probably find humans and beg for food. So that's why we have him and use him as an educational ambassador, is because we can't release him into the wild. And red-tailed hawks, unlike the Harris hawks who hunt in packs, they hunt by themselves. And so they don't rely on a family group to help them hunt. Kiwa here relies mostly on his keen eyesight. So he has amazing eyesight. He can see a mouse from about 17 football fields away. So that is exceptionally good. And he uses that to find his food, and then he will use his talons and his beak to swoop in and grab said mouse. They use their talons and their beak kind of like we would use a fork and a knife. So he pins it down with those sharp talons and rips small pieces off with his sharp beak, and that's how they eat. It's a little different from, say, like an owl, who will eat their prey whole most of the time. These guys and most other hawks will actually tear it into small pieces. I have it easy for him today because his food's already cut up, so he doesn't have to really hold it down and rip at it today. I think what else? Sorry. So, red-tailed hawks and other hawks, they all have, well, really all the birds at the American Eagle Foundation mostly have some distinct characteristics that make them birds of prey. And like I talked about, his talons and his beak, those are two very distinguishing factors. At AEF, we also do take care of some vultures, and they are considered birds of prey, but they actually don't hunt for their food. So their feet and beak are built different than these guys. Since they scavenge for food. Trying to think of what else.
Talking about their wing shape.
Yeah. I don't know if Kiwa will flap his wings for you. Can't really get him to do it unless he wants to. So their wings are made for soaring and capturing thermal vents pretty much. Red-tailed hawks, when they do find prey, they kind of circle around the prey as they're flying, and they will kind of circle down and grab it from the ground, versus, say, like Peregrine Falcons, or really any of the falcon species. Their wings are a lot more angular, where these guys kind of have more like a general curve, and that's because falcons are built for speed, and these guys are not. We do have some Peregrine Falcons at AEF, and those guys are extremely fast compared to these guys. Kiwa's top speed, probably about 65, 70 miles an hour, whereas a Peregrine Falcon is closer to 300 miles per hour in a dive. So they are the fastest land animal that we, or not fastest land animal, fastest animal that we have on the planet. And they're usually a lot smaller than the hawk species as well, most falcons are. It's like, oh, you have food. Oh, what else? That's all I got.
That's fine. Just do a transition into him.
Yeah. I'll try to get him put back up.
Alright, and our last bird is actually our most famous bird at the foundation. This is Challenger, the bald eagle. And the fun thing about the bald eagle is that clearly you can tell he is not bald. He has feathers on his head. And that's just because bald comes from an Old English term, which just means white-headed. So when the, I was going to say old guys, that's not right. So when the old noblemen of America, when it was first getting founded, actually, where they're English, and Old English, actually when to establish your nobility, you actually would wear white wigs to different events and socializations. So when they came to America and they saw that the eagle had a white head, they thought it was very noble and regal of him, so they named him Bald, just like how bald meant back in England. Same thing, different terms. But Challenger here, he is actually 32 years old, and he actually used to fly around in stadiums all over the United States. He is actually very well traveled. He's actually been to more states than I have. And that's just because he would actually fly during the national anthem at different NFL games. So he actually flew at the Philadelphia Eagles games, he's flown at MLB games, hockey games, even UT games. But unfortunately, he has actually developed a cataract in his eye, so he is actually can't see very well, just like how we have to wear glasses. We can't really put glasses on an eagle. So for his safety, we decided to retire him from free flying, just so that way he could live the good life that he so deserves. Thank you for spitting on me. But Challenger here, he is actually considered a fish eagle, and that is because the bald eagle is actually found around lakes and rivers, mainly watersheds, and that's because their main diet is actually fish. Today he's actually getting some fish little snacks. We'll see if he wants to eat some as he drops it. And that's because they are actually special on their feet. So you can kind of see his talons here in his feet. His feathers actually stop about up here on his leg, and that's because when he's out at that water, when he spots the fish on top of that surface, he'll actually use his really good eyesight they actually have like a polarization on their lenses. So just like how we wear sunglasses when we're out fishing, they have that built into their eyes so they can actually see under the water pretty well. And when he's out sitting in those trees along the water line, he can actually spot those fish on the surface, and then he'll swoop in and catch them with his feet. And his feet actually have a little like muscle in them, so as soon as he hits that fish, they'll actually constrict, and that way he can hold on super tight to that fish, because fish are really slimy. That way, as it's trying to wiggle out of his feet, he'll be able to hold on tight to it. And as you can see, he's kind of spreading his wings for you there. He actually has a 5.5 foot wingspan, which is actually pretty small for a bald eagle. So Challenger here, he actually came to us from Louisiana. So he's a southern boy. And typically with bald eagles, the more north you get, specifically the more northwest you get, the bigger they get. You good? But Chow here, where I was saying he is a southern male, so he is actually going to be the smallest that you'll find of the bald eagles here in America. So typically the more northwest you get out toward Oregon and Washington State, the bigger they're going to be. Especially in Alaska. The largest ones you'll find are going to be in mainly like Alaska and Canada. But also where he is also a male, he is going to be smaller than the females. So typically with birds of prey, you'll have the females being larger than the males. That's just because they have to have that room for the eggs. But like I was saying with his feet, he actually has special pads on his feet as well that will actually help with catching those fish and whatnot. And with his wingspan right there, so typically the smallest you're going to find them is about Challenger size here. So he is actually only 7.5 pounds, which is actually pretty small for an eagle. A lot of people think he is actually a lot larger than that. They make it sound like I'm really strong. I appreciate that. But they are actually all birds of prey, and actually all birds have hollow bones and air sacs throughout their body to make them as light as possible. That way they can fly a lot easier and use less energy when they do so. So Chow makes it look like I'm a really strong person, and we'll clean that up later. Thanks, bud. But Challenger here, he is 32 years old, like I was saying, and typically out in the wild, they would actually only live to be in their 20s or 30s. What do you see, bud? You see something that he's not a fan of?
I think it's just the...
Yeah, I think that's... Yeah, I think the background's moving on him. He's not a fan of it. So his bad eye is his left side. So if he sees anything kind of to the left of him, it makes him a little bit more anxious and nervous just because he can't see it as well. It's just like us kind of having blind spots and someone coming up and spooking you. It's kind of the same thing for him. But I lost my train of thought. We'll just make sure that he's comfortable. So with all of our birds at the foundation, we do use operant conditioning and positive reinforcement. So we're not going to make these guys do anything that they don't want to do. And if they show us any kind of signs of uncomfort or distress, we will do anything in our power to mitigate to where it can be the most positive experience as possible for these guys. We don't want them to have more stress than what they need to. So typically, out in the wild, they do live about half their lifespan that they would here in human care. That's typical for all the birds of prey that you saw today. And that's typically because they have free health care. It's kind of nice, right? They have little stress because they're basically living vacation every single day. And then they also have free food, like you just saw me feeding him. So they literally are living the high life. But if it was up to us, we would actually rather them be out in the wild where they're supposed to be. But Challenger here, I don't know if I've said it yet or not, but he was actually, like I was saying, he came from Louisiana, but unfortunately he actually fell out of his nest as a baby. And then some good people actually found him on the ground and took him home to kind of help raise him and kind of take care of him. But unfortunately in doing so, when you do that, if you do find any kind of bird of prey or any kind of baby on the ground, you should take it immediately to your veterinarian or call a special rehabilitator. So that way they can come and get them and take care of them the proper way. But unfortunately when he went to their house, they took him in and kind of raised him as a pet. And because of that, he was actually unable to survive out in the wild on his own. So he is actually what we call a human imprint, just like Kiwa that you saw earlier. But because of that, we actually tried to release him 3 different times from 3 different rehabbers down in the south. And after the 3rd time of him coming back to people saying, coming back starving and very thin from not being able to hunt on his own, Fish and Wildlife deemed him non-releasable and they brought him to the American Eagle Foundation. So he's been with us for about 30 years. So he's been with us basically his whole life, minus like 1 year. But yeah, but he's starting to show me some signs that he's a little nervous, so I'm gonna go ahead and put him back. Let's see if he's doing that. You're fine, bud. You're okay. You're mixed signals, dude. Mixed signals.
So here at AEF, we kind of have some exciting news. We are actually moving from the facility we are at now to, which is about 5 acres, to a new facility in Kodak that is about 57 acres. So we're going to have plenty of room for the birds and us. We're going to have educational classrooms on site, so schools will be able to come in and
Field trips.
Yeah, have field trips and experience the birds on site. We'll also have a little bit of a museum on site, I think, is planned, as well as an amphitheater and some trails, and it'll be a great experience that's going to be open to the public sometime in 2022, hopefully. That is the projected opening date right now, but
All goes as planned.
if all goes as planned.
We're also going to have one of the largest rehab hospitals for birds of prey in the United States as well there, so we're super excited about that. That way we can take care of more birds of prey and help out even more around our community. So we're even more excited about that. We'll actually have like our own like intake. It'll be like an actual like vet hospital, but for birds of prey rehabilitation. We're super excited about that.
And if you have any questions for us or want to connect with AEF or figure out how you can donate, since we are a nonprofit, you can visit our website at eagles.org, and that'll give you just about all the information, and even tell you how to contact us if you do find, say, an injured bird of prey out in the wild and need somebody to come pick it up.
Yeah. We're also on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. We're on all the social media sites. And all of those are, we're on Facebook, we are the American Eagle Foundation, and then on, I think, TikTok and Instagram, we are AEF Eagles. Some of our birds also have Instagrams, you should also look those up. But yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.